Okay.
All right, Leonie. Thank you for supporting me with this interview. Can you just briefly introduce yourself first?
Okay, so I'm Leonie. I'm RTLB practice leader
Yep,
based at Te High School.
great.
Live in Mamakino,
Thank you very much.
travel here every day.
Yep. Would you be able to tell me just briefly about your role as a cluster leader? Where do you work? What do you do? And who do you work with?
Okay, so as I said, RTLB practice leader based at Te High School. I'm employed in Cluster 17
Yep.
by Taumaranui High School. So
Mhm.
our cluster goes from Taumaranui to Raglan, covers 61
Oh,
schools. So lots of small rural schools.
yeah.
So I've been RTLB for just over 6 years. I was just doing a quick count just earlier. Worked in two clusters. So I started in cluster 17, then moved to cluster 14, was
Yeah.
practice leader there for a little while, moved back to cluster 17.
Okay.
And I've been practice leader in this cluster for 2.5 terms. So
Okay.
it's all quite different to being a practice leader in cluster 14. So who do I work with? I work with other RTLB, of course, schools, teachers, whānau, MOE personnel, other agencies,
Yeah.
supporting with learning and behaviour across all levels of te papa,
Wow.
right from te arotahi to matua. So the other part of my role
Mhm.
is that I'm a member of the New Zealand RTLB Professional Learning Network.
Right.
So there's 11 of us from across the country.
Yep.
We get together in school holidays usually for a couple of days, and basically we look at ways that we can support our RTLB colleagues to support schools.
Yeah.
So massive bits of work. So we've created a website. We've got online communities of practice up and running. So things like
Mhm.
trauma-informed practice, universal design for learning, neurodiversity, collaborative and proactive solutions. So those are all the COPs that we've got going.
Yeah.
Also got one going for practice leaders
Oh, yeah.
specifically, a closed
Mhm.
group. So we do podcasts, we've got blog posts, and obviously just regular hui, like throughout the week, throughout
Fantastic.
the,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Lots
it's
of work. Definitely lots
lots
of
of,
put in.
it's exciting.
It is exciting, extremely
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah. And, everything that you were just listing now, it's just resonates with us, with learning support coordinators as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
mm.
Yeah.
Um, would you describe me an average day of yours, a typical day for you? How does it look like?
Okay, so it depends on the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely depends on the day.
Yeah.
So we have to do Google Calendars, so we make sure that our calendars are planned for the following week.
Mm.
But there's generally variation in that depending on what's happening. So, for example, today I've been away for 2 days at Morrinsville. We're doing cluster peer review with Cluster 14.
Yeah.
And so I was over there with our leadership team interviewing school principals, school staff, other RTLB, just around what happens
Mhm.
in their cluster. So today when I got back, it was like, okay, reconnect with the team. That's thing number one. There was something else on my calendar, but actually I kind of went, nah, that can wait.
Yeah.
And usually it waits until night. So if I kind of don't do something that's on my calendar, it
Yeah.
gets done later in the evening.
Mhm.
Um, so then I had hui with a lovely lady from Ako Solutions because we're trying to get te ara whakamana into local schools around the Tikoti area. So been
Mhm.
liaising with her for a long time now. So just did a quick check-in with her.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it is just a matter of what's on my calendar. Could be meetings, could be school visits, sometimes arranging PD, looking at new requests for support prior to them being submitted for allocation, looking at funding applications, talking to the cluster manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a massive range. There is casework in amongst that, but I don't have individual cases because one of my goals is to move from te arotahi, so there's individual focused cases through to systems work.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Um, Do you know how many RTLBs are in your cluster around?
There are, on a good day, 15. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
small by comparison to, yeah,
Compared to
lots
other
of clusters.
yeah, true, but you have 60 schools, 60 odd schools. So
Yeah, lots of
not
traveling.
and it's a huge area.
Huge, yeah. Yeah.
Just going back to your role, what bodies of knowledge do you need to know about in your role?
Okay, so again, it's a bit of everything. So I started listing it, and I was like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to write everything. But things like we need to know about the curriculum because that's kind of our core work. We need to know what quality teaching and learning looks like.
Yeah.
We need to know about human development. Yes, assessments, so ecological assessments, all in range of assessments. More and more, we need to know about social emotional curricula.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of those types of cases coming up. Behaviour strategy. So it's good to know about PB4L. It's good to know about restorative practice. We have IYT facilitators in our cluster, so we kind of get told, yep, you have to go along to that and find out about IYT. Collaborative proactive solution stuff. So that's all sort of in the behaviour realm, I guess. Obviously, we need to know about policies and procedures, not just our own, but the schools that we work in, and then actually how to work with schools to support them to review to some extent as well. We need to know the RTLB toolkit. So that kind of falls off the radar on occasion. So one of our goals this year is when people ask us a question, saying to them in the first instance, what does the toolkit say? So just knowing that. I kind of am a little bit nosy in my practice leader role, and probably because I've been a principal, I want to know what's in the governance and management manuals and documents as well. So obviously, we need to know about brain plasticity, neurodiversity, and like a lot of it is surface stuff until we kind of get a case in that area, and then we're always researching and doing the whole inquiry stuff. We need to know, of course, about he pukurua, the principles of practice, te tuapapa. We need to know what quality RTLB practice looks like, particularly in, well, all of us do, but probably in the practice leader role because we're leading practice. It's good to know what good practice looks like, right? Obviously, alongside that is coaching and mentoring, conflict resolution, privacy protocols. The list goes on.
Exactly. Now, that list definitely will lead you to some tensions in your role.
Absolutely.
Talk about some of the tensions that might occur.
So I think for me, it's dealing with inconsistencies in a range of areas. I'm kind of probably systems focused. People keep telling me, oh, your systems, you're not relational. Well, I feel like I'm relational where I need to be relational. So sometimes with my RTLB colleagues, that's probably a bit of a tension because I might not be as relational, but so there's often tension, well, not often, there's sometimes tensions there. I think the practice leader space is a tricky space because you can be a little bit of a go-between between the cluster manager and decisions that are made at that level, and then working with RTLB to ensure that those are put into place. So that can be, but our RTLB are actually pretty good at going directly to the cluster manager if they don't like something, which is quite.
The hard conversations that you mean probably.
Yeah, and there is an expectation of the cluster manager that I have a lot of those hard conversations, and then obviously if the recipient wants to take it further, then talk to the cluster manager. And sometimes the tricky space for me is, I think that conversation needs to be had with the cluster manager.
Yeah, I'll get it.
So another tension, I guess, is teachers not responding or engaging despite being part of the planning process. That can be a massive tension. And we've got a new RTLB who was on the phone to me the other day saying, oh my gosh, the school aren't putting in the agreed actions.
Yes. Yeah.
So that can be a tricky space as well, because obviously you want win-win. I think another tension for me is the variations in the quality of our RTLB practice. So it's been able to, I know that, everyone works differently, but there's different, and then there's,
Approaches, different theory approaches to what an RTLB role is. Is that what you kind of?
More so, some of us were trained in the old way, and He Pikaroa has come along, and some people see it as the old practice sequence with Maori words, and I'm kind of going, oh, well, I was trained in the old way too, but actually, it's totally different from my perspective. Yeah. I think the other tension for me. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. You can list another tension, and then we're going to talk about some happy stuff.
Yeah. So I think another one is ensuring that I give enough time to both the PL and the RTLB responsibilities.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What do you like about your role? I'm
I
sure
think for me, it's simple. It's seeing growth and
Yes.
knowing I've made a difference. And whether that's for the mokopuna, the kayak, or the whānau, or other RTLB, that's it in a nutshell for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think not just specialist teachers, but overall educators are the happiest when we see there's movement, there's development in any level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Within your role as an RTLB cluster leader, how do you build connections, for example, with whānau teachers or other professionals?
So I try to keep whanaungatanga on top,
Yeah.
but also by never forgetting who and what we're here for. Yeah. So I every now and again I kind of go, why am I here? I'm here for. So making sure that I'm building connections to ensure that my why,
Your why.
is addressed. Yeah. I've just written here, sometimes we as RTLB can be in uncomfortable spaces in our mahi,
Yeah.
but we need to maintain connections. So we need to use a range of methods and strategies. Yeah. And that might be actually utilizing the service of somebody else to rebuild a connection if that's what's required. So mainly it's about talking, sharing, being brave, and being a little bit vulnerable. So Jaden, and I use Jaden a lot in my casework. I actually interviewed him just last night about autism, and does he want to be called? Does he say I am autistic or I have autism? So yeah, just sharing those little stories makes you that little bit vulnerable, and that helps build connections, like those personal stories.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. So remembering that we're often visitors in the space that we work in, so keeping that front and center as well. We're not just going on in there being bolshy and telling people what to do. By networking with MOE, LEC, other RTLB, Senko colleagues. Yeah, and building connections with other agencies, usually through shared cases.
Yeah.
And with my team, it's usually with regular kind of informal check-ins. It's never we've got a half-hour meeting now to reconnect. Where I just wander into their office, we have chats. Yeah.
On a need to basis.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
I think you kind of answered my next question. How do you ensure that you take action with integrity? How do you ensure that your work is student-centered and strength-based and responsive? I think you kind of answered most of that. Would you like to add anything to that?
I've got heaps to add to it if you want me to.
Okay. Yep.
So through being culturally responsive,
Mm.
by ensuring that I gather the voice of all stakeholders and using the voice to inform the team's work. Because if you're not doing that, then where is the integrity? It's by making sure the whole team is able to be involved in all aspects of the case, from monitoring and even monitoring in the review process. By continuing to build on the strengths of team members. Another big thing for me is that our work aligns with our principles of practice. So mokopuna whānau centered, strengths-based, ecological, all that rich kind of stuff, that helps with the integrity. Because it would be otherwise quite easy just to go off on your own little journey as an RTLB. And I make we have case reviews, and I'm forever saying to our RTLB, how are you using the He Pikaroa reflective questions within your casework? And they kind of look at me and go, I knew you were going to ask me, so I read them yesterday. So, but that helps with the taking action with integrity aspect. Also, things like ensuring privacy protocols and confidentiality are maintained, using service agreements and informed consents, because that's what we do in cluster 14, cluster 17.
Those ethical, really
Yeah.
looking at ethical practice
Yeah.
here. And yeah, reflective practice, how do you look
Yeah.
at your outcomes and what's the impact? So you mentioned about reflective practice already.
Yeah.
Right. What are some ways you are able to empower others?
So this is a tricky one because the using the English words empower others doesn't kind of encompass mana motuhake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our cluster at the moment is looking at mana motuhake, which it sits at the end, if you like, of the he pikarua practice sequence. But what we're saying is we should be addressing is a horrible word, acknowledging mana motuhake throughout a case from start to finish. So we're actually in the process of looking at what will that look like within every stage of he pikarua. So actually in whanaungatanga, it could be about saying to whānau, where would you like to meet? We'll meet where you feel comfortable to meet. So just little things like that. But so I guess in my notes, I've by acknowledging and using the collective expertise within and across teams. So that's letting whānau and teachers know that you guys, particularly whānau, you're the expert about your child, not me. I'm not coming in with that expert hat on. Use of voice, supporting key people to make key decisions, showing rather than telling. Sometimes mana motuhake is about sitting quietly and just listening. That can be very empowering.
Exactly.
Yeah, for all stakeholders. Looking at what knowledge, strategy, skills can be utilised throughout a case in order to build capability of team members. But it's also about getting feedback on aspects of my own practice so I can address gaps in my own practice, and looking at ways that the experience has impacted on my thinking as well. So yeah, I've just written here, mana motuhake is an area that we as a cluster are doing more work around, as it's a concept that goes across. We're currently looking into ways that to support our RTLB to gain a deeper understanding of what it is across their casework. And for me, it is. It's just such a huge concept. And for me, it's been really difficult to get my head around, particularly when you start to dig deeper. If you just take it as it's about empowering others, that feels easy. But when you look at actually what is mana motuhake, it's huge.
Yes, and all the different levels that
Yeah.
Motake actually is working, really. So that's the enormity of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was lots to take in.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, I've got to be ready for this. I've just spent the last hour going, what does that mean for me and my work? It's been good for me.
It was probably a little bit of a reflective time for
Yeah, absolutely.
all the things that you have to do and you do because you're driven. So to get that result for the students. Leonie, I knew you work really hard, but this gave me a different level of appreciation. So thank you so much for this. And yeah, we'll catch up later on.